monkeys, and people say we monkey around, but we're too busy singing to put anybody down.
Hello, my name is Sara Pascoe. Welcome to Modern Monkey. It's a stand-up show about human evolution and how it affects us in the present day. This week, I'm thinking about territory and how we divide our world to share it or not. I've been recording at the RAF Museum. I've been standing underneath these aeroplanes built to kill people and wondering how we got here. The other apes are throwing sticks and biting each other, and we've got nuclear weapons. Are we advanced or backwards? Can we be proud of being top of the class while we are bombing the classroom? Imagine I'm like lowering my glasses then. That's what's going on. And today we're in the Sigmund Freud Museum. So as a Jewish man in 1930s Europe, Sigmund Freud bore witness to the darkest side of human nature. He came to London to escape the Nazis, who burned his books, stole his money and his property. As an intellectual, Freud's legacy is that we know about the subconscious, that we have desires and intentions that we might not be aware of, but that drive and influence our behaviour. Like how consciously you've come here today because you want to hear me talk about anthropology, but subconsciously you've come because of how attractive your mother is. Aren't people fascinating? I've been thinking a lot about territory in my personal life because I've recently moved house and I've got an enemy. She lives opposite me, and every morning at 8:30, I have to get up early to watch her. Every morning at 8:30, she gets into her car, she moves it forward about 5 metres, leaves the engine running, jumps out, goes round to the boot, gets out 4 orange traffic cones, and then puts them on the floor in a square where her car was, and then runs round, back in her car, and she just drives off to whatever an uptight bitch does all day. I know bitch isn't a very sisterly word, but I hope under the circumstances that you'll forgive me. I hate her so much. I can't live my life anymore. I can't deal with it. All of us live in a very crowded world. We have to share things. I live on a road without parking restrictions. I don't understand the psychology that makes someone go, no, this bit's mine. I hate her. I've got a favourite table in Pret-a-Manger. I don't drag it home with me so no one else can sit there. We have to share. And also, I hate that she's appropriating official property. I hate that they're not official traffic cones. They are lady cones. They are plastic, pointy, passive aggression. Why are we letting the objects beat us? When you go on holiday and people put down a towel on a lounger and then they go away for 4 hours and no one moves the towel, why am I shivering under a tree letting a towel have a better holiday than me? Why just throw it in the pool? Why don't we do that? And it's only very recently started to bother me, but people on the tube, it's so busy, we're all crushed in there, we're all strangers, and then someone has their bag up on a seat when there are people standing. And this never used to bother me. I used to be younger than this. I used to be a young woman with a young woman's lack of self-confidence. I would never have thought I was better than a bag. I would be standing up, trying to make myself as small as possible, wishing there was a diet that would make me invisible. I didn't feel superior to a rucksack. I would look and think, it's probably got important documents in there or something. But now I'm more confident because I found out about white privilege, and it just really makes me believe in myself. And now I hate these people. And I've realised that also, in case you were thinking that woman, that one opposite me, in case you were thinking, maybe she's got mobility issues, maybe she can't walk along the road if she has to park further away. No, because I've seen her running down the road chasing her dog after I let her dog go to see if she was able-bodied. She's fine. So what I've realised is, and this is what's interesting for me, is that instinct I get, this very, very visceral burst of anger when someone is encroaching a little bit, when someone uses both armrests, when a man is sitting there with both of his legs really wide open. Man-spreading is using your body like cones. No, stop it. But I've realised that emotion, it's primal. That actually, 100,000 years ago, our species, if somebody encroached on our territory, if we came face to face with a stranger when it was something we thought was ours, we would rip their throat out with our teeth. And I feel like I still get the urge to do that. And also, that's the thing, I think it's so much better that we don't. I think it's such an improvement that we don't rip each other's throats out with our teeth anymore. But I feel like there has to be a middle ground, like between that and tutting. There must be something we can do. I don't know, this is immature, but I don't drive. I'm so tempted to buy a car. Just so I can leave it outside our house forever. It's immature. So I think this is a particularly sensitive area for me because, well, I think I'm particularly sensitive to the notion of personal space. And that's because I had to share a bedroom with my sister Cheryl for 16 and a half years. That's from Cheryl's birth up until I left home at 18 to live with a woman who would steal and sell my bike. Cheryl and I fought every single day while we were living together. We fought every single day. We had screaming physical fights over broken Walkmans and lost trainers and who used up all the tampons. Footnote, she had not started her period. She'd drawn faces on them all. So I had no privacy while I was growing up, and it made me feel insane. We tried so many things to make it easier. We tried dividing the room, drawing a line down the floor so that she could have her space and I could have my space. But unfortunately, the door was on Cheryl's side of the room and the wardrobe was on my side of the room. So if ever she saw me outside of the bedroom, she would know I'd gone on her side and we would have to fight. And similarly, if I ever saw her dressed, I knew. And I've always thought that this was very immature, we were silly girls trying to divvy up our world. But then I found out about the Treaty of Tordesillas. Back in 1494, when exploring the world, Portugal and Spain had this really awkward thing where they both kept turning up at the same countries and trying to claim them. So they decided they would split the world down a line of longitude. So everything to the west was to be Spain's and everything to the east of the line of longitude was to be Portugal's. And that's why in South America, Brazil on the east speaks Portuguese and the rest of South America speaks Spanish. It's so interesting. It's so fascinating. And then you actually think about what they were doing, and appalling. Like, this is appalling. This isn't tampons. This is countries with people living in them. I'm like, oh, wow, there's this brand new country, said the explorers when they arrived. No one's ever even been here before. Like, it's ours now. Hiya, said the indigenous peoples. I don't know the exact details, but I understand this on an emotional level because my mum moved in one of her boyfriends, so I understand what it is to be colonised by a man called David, who shouts at you and waggles his fork, even though he's not your real dad, and your real dad would never shout at you because he's too busy with jazz. Said the indigenous peoples, and this is inconvenient for the Portuguese or the English or the Spanish because they have found something that wasn't lost. Oh, I just found your wallet in your pocket. I just found your television in your living room. Oh, I just found your entire house and I'm going to move in with my farty dog and treat your mum like crap and give you issues with men, and then you'll be 36 and alone and it's all my fault, I'm David. English history is a really sad story. It's like, once upon a time, we were a tiny island who ransacked the globe. Now it's in the British Museum, the end. And the appendix is just the long list of peoples we've mistreated. So invading the land of others and stealing their stuff is classic ape behaviour. Chimpanzees attack their rivals to expand their territory. For humans and chimps alike, territory means food and protection. It means status and mating opportunities. It means increased chances at survival. For tens of thousands of years, dominating enemy tribes has been how humans survived. But why do we still do it? We should be better. We've got vegan cheese. Unfortunately, the reason is that evolutionary adaptations take place between 10,000 and 1,000,000 years. Our bodies and brains may be wearing trousers and thinking about Love Island, but they were sculpted over a millennia for a nomadic tribal lifestyle, like a gap year, but with more starving to death. England has historically oppressed and abused and enslaved, and then we were all born and we just reap the benefits. Most of us in this room, we get to say things like, well, I didn't sail any boats or slaughter any natives or steal any marbles. When I go on holiday, it's an EasyJet plane, I pay for my souvenirs, and no matter how drunk I get, I never massacre. I'm not one of those bad olden days people. But we say that knowing that we still reap the rewards, that the wealth of our country wasn't built on natural resources, but those plundered from other countries. Quick, Sarah, change the subject. Humans are mammals, and all any mammal wants is safety, sex, and food.
This is more like it.
It's simple stuff, but it's vital. Your happiness and mine depends on those things. Our brains give us neurochemical rewards, little hits of dopamine or serotonin that encourage us to eat sandwiches and flirt in the office and take care of our well-being. So how come, if that's how we're made, as individuals we currently live so respectfully? I don't snatch your sausage. You don't break into my house for a nap. Half the answer is learning. We teach our children to cooperate. If you look at toddlers, they don't know the rules yet. They're all running around, stealing each other's toys and thumping each other. Yet will anyone fund my tiny prison?
If you've got lots of money, why not give some to me so I can build a very cute and small prison?
The other half of the answer is that humans also get neurochemical rewards from making connections with others, from sharing and being liked. Each of us is an evolutionary compromise between aggressive behaviours that can help us in certain situations and social behaviours that can benefit us in others. So imagine you're a guy and you live 25,000 years ago. If you're a team player, that will make you a better hunter, more likely to catch the prey that will keep you and your family alive. Also, if you share what you're catching with the rest of the tribe, then they are more willing to share with you when they catch something. But the other side of this is, if when you are out hunting, you meet another tribe, Gary's tribe, and you're like, oh, hey guys, we're having deer tonight, come on over, then you're leaving yourself at risk. You have no genetic relations to these people. You have no vested interest in their survival. You'd be silly. You're an idiot because Gary's just going to mate with all the females and eat all of your children because that's what he's like. We have to accept that we are still apes, that we're hardwired for competitiveness, but now we have guns and missiles and rockets rather than pointy sticks. Within our society, we bring up children to be as kind as possible. We teach them to say sorry for hurting others. We have anti-bullying campaigns and RE lessons about tolerance and compassion. We understand that a tribe now isn't a group of 50 or 60 people, but of millions and millions, and that we must compromise and work together.
And we do all these lovely, sweet things while our tax money pays other people to kill people for us.
Not all territorial instincts are deadly. There's a theory that lots of modern behaviours have echoes of evolutionary urges, but they have become more domesticated and less dangerous. So, for instance, supporting a football team can be tribal and territorial and fun. George Orwell called football war without bullets. But there can be something animalistic about encountering a huge group of fans on match day. I've always been really, really scared, when you see them, and I do think it's primal. The kind of singing that they do, that kind of yelling that takes up your space and makes you notice them. That's a very good impression of exactly what they sound like. Yeah, hello. Whatever the kicky legs, that kind of thing. They take up the space and it's threatening when you're not part of it. So I decided to become part of it. As research for this show, I went to my first ever football match. It was West Ham United versus Liverpool. I don't support either of the teams, so I wore a combination of kits. I wore a West Ham T-shirt and a Liverpool scarf and socks and an Arsenal hat, just to show everybody that football was the real winner. And I really, really loved it. I loved being part of this huge amount of people. It wasn't scary once I was inside, if that makes sense. I learned so much. I learned that Harry Redknapp is not the manager anymore. I learned that it's not called an interval. It's called a pitch vacation. I also learned that Reed is a liability and that it's very helpful to the players if you shout out advice, like forward, the whole time. And I also know that if you concede 3 goals in 20 minutes, people will leave. It surprised me. Actually, what also was a real shock to me is how much I wanted to be called up to play in the game. I have got this thing. I think it's like a delusion of grandeur. I used to get it when I used to go to pop concerts as a teenager, that I would always think that they would be able to see me. Like, even though I was behind tens of thousands of people, I would think, no, I'm going to put on my best crushed velour red top, just so that when I'm walking past Earl's Court, Howard might be looking out of a window and be like, you, backstage. And exactly the same thing happened at football, where I was just imagining that, like, what if they ran out of substitutes? Or they just came out like, oh no, all of the players have come down with food poisoning. Is anyone wearing both kits? And here I am, there you go. Any tribe doesn't include all human beings. So that's our situation. Like chimpanzees, we attack as a form of defence. Our wish to protect ourselves and our family is probably, it's a good thing. It's a really positive thing. And it's probably the deepest of our innate and essential purposes. Any ancient human who didn't mind if somebody bit her throat out, it was like, oh yeah, Gary, of course, eat my children, they look delicious. She'd be an evolutionary failure. Territorial instinct is a life instinct, and those without it didn't flourish. We don't have their genes because Gary ate them. But what it means for us now is that, well, if you take kind of relatively recent events, an attack like 9/11 makes people feel very scared. Suddenly there's bloodlust and a wish for vengeance and a heightened desire to feel protected. And so an attack from an extremist group leads to an unrelated war, humans from one place killing humans from another place, while we live on very removed from that, kind of getting Ocado deliveries and crying at the news and thinking we are superior to animals. We're not superior, we're the same but toilet trained. And we're not all toilet trained. Fund my tiny prison. I'm a super pacifist, right? If I was Prime Minister, I would cancel all national defence. I would send the army to art school. I'd put Trident on eBay. I would give the millions and billions saved into paying nurses and teachers. And our country would be invaded, and I probably wouldn't be re-elected. What I'm trying to show is that the territorial way we evolved is still very much affecting our present. Look how many occupied countries there are in the world. Look at Israel, Palestine, and then try to have an opinion about it, which isn't wrong. Like, look at our collective reaction to the people displaced and desperate and dwelling across the channel. There was a lot of sympathy and articles and looking, and there was a charity record, but there wasn't a lot of, like, live in my house, because humans aren't built that way. We feel entitled to what we have, even though most of us only really got it by chance. Like, oh, I worked really hard to be born here. If Syrians wanted to not freeze and starve in the woods of Calais, they should have gestated in my mother's womb like I did. This isn't a moral judgment, by the way. This is just how we're made. It's how we've survived as a species, despite being weak and slow and ill-suited to every terrain and landscape that this planet offers. I'm sorry, have you seen a naked man? We're so poorly designed. Gender is so relevant to territory. Let me tell you about the time I went to Morocco. So I just thought I'd go on holiday by myself.
On my own, because I'm a single lady, and I could go with my friends, but I'd have to wait 16 years until their kids grew up.
Also, I don't like the term single. I prefer the term very, very lonely. I decided I was going to go on holiday by myself, and I went to Morocco. And the mistake was I had looked in a search engine, where will be hot at the beginning of October, and where also doesn't have mosquitoes. Quite important. And if you are a Western woman, the men and it's not about beauty or youth or hair colour. It's just that you're Western. They chase you, they shout at you, they touch you, and they don't stop. And nobody in a public place sticks up for you. This is just run of the mill. Imagine hungry hippos, and you're the bulls. Okay, it's like that. And so the first time I left the hotel, for 8 minutes, I came back crying, and because I was very, very shocked and very upset. I know I'm a snowflake. I don't like being touched in sexually aggressive ways by strangers. I was one of those people who don't like it, and so I got back to the hotel and I was crying. And the man who worked at reception, who'd obviously had this thing before with Western women, was trying to explain to me that it's a cultural difference. That in the country I was in, I had to understand that to them, I was like, I don't know, a prostitute who doesn't charge. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Well, now I understand. And the advice he gave me was to make sure I was covering up all of my skin. Now, I was already covering up all my skin. Like, I get dressed. The other advice they gave me in the hotel, they said, if you wear a ring on your wedding finger, then sometimes the men will leave you alone. But it just feels like the most unfeminist thing to do in the world. Like, I'm sorry, I already belong to a man. Can you please respect his property? I'm like, oh, Sarah, have you been on holiday? Like, yes, I went to the patriarchy. There's no mosquitoes. There's a really, really surprising UN statistic that 99% of land in the world is owned by men. So the reason I'm telling you this is because I'm very, very lucky, right? I'm privileged enough to have my own space. I can afford that. I know that a territory that's yours, no matter how small, is vital for safety. A door that you can shut is protection, or it feels like it is. Even smaller than that, your territory is, sometimes when you're with other people, your territory is literally like the outline of your body. But sometimes things happen, you're treated in a certain way when people encroach even on that, and you're kind of told that even your body isn't yours. The worst housemate I ever had was called Nine. That wasn't her fault. Her parents had clearly smoked drugs and forgotten that people aren't maths. Nine knew no boundaries. She would wake me when I was sleeping. She sold a bike she didn't realise was mine. And she broke the locks on the bathroom so that I couldn't exclude her. I won a voucher for a holiday in a bar on a night out, and Nine was very excited when I got home and told her. And the next day, went into my room while I was at work and called the number on the voucher, booked in the dates, and gave her name as my travelling companion. Saves you the hassle, she told me. So I went to Ibiza with Nine, the most unorthodox episode of Sesame Street ever. Nine did the classic, the worst thing that someone can do when it's just the two of you on holiday. She met someone. She met a guy really, really early in the holiday. Not on the first night, not even when we arrived at the resort. Nine met a guy at Gatwick. She went to sit with him on the aeroplane so that they could drink and kiss, and then I had to sit with his friend Ben so that we could despise each other and wish we were dead. There's a thing at the time when we're recording going on a lot in the press about harassment in workplaces, or how women are being touched and what is appropriate and what isn't appropriate. And there's also a lot of kind of backlash against people who are complaining about things that seem relatively minor, having bottoms squeezed or hands on thighs. But they don't understand that the really huge thing is when someone does something like that, what they're telling you is that even you aren't yours. The reason I was telling you about going to Ibiza with Nine, the second half of that story is I was looking through my life for something that would kind of demonstrate this, but that wouldn't be too traumatic for anyone to listen to. So I went to Ibiza with Nine, and she met a guy. And what happened is every night, her and this guy would make love in our hotel room. And I didn't want to be there. I don't think any of us wanted to be there. So I had to sleep in his room. He was on a lad's holiday. So I was sleeping in a room with 5 young men. And so what would happen is that I would stay up as late as possible because I didn't want to go to sleep, because when I did go to sleep, the guys one by one would get into the bed with me and try it on. And like the Moroccan men, this wasn't, because I'm so attractive or they had a deep passion for me. This is just because I was there. And so I feel like I have to say that in case you think I'm really bragging. Yeah, everyone really wants me. And so they'd get in my bed as I slept, and I would wake up and tell them to get out, please, and then they would, and for that I feel lucky. I feel lucky because I was very vulnerable and I escaped that situation. And like lots of women, I have lots of stories like that we all share. I know how vulnerable women are without territory. So the macrocosms, we have the countries and resources, and how rich we are is dependent on land and space.
Like Brazil was for the Portuguese, like the rest of South America was for the Spanish, like my tampons were for Cheryl.
But the other side of it, as a microcosm, if you don't even have the edge of your own body, you're so vulnerable.
This is all interconnecting, or at least it is in my mind. I can see that we've got the huge thing, the macrocosm, of the countries that we live on, the land that we fight bitterly to protect because it relates to our safety and to our wealth. But on a smaller level, the microcosm is the fact that each of us has this personal space, our own human body, and the human right to move freely, unencumbered through space, or actually maybe into space.
Some people think our planet is doomed, that it's all gone too far. Elon Musk, he says that the new territory is on Mars, that we could colonise the red planet as early as 2020. Earth is ruined. Let's go to Mars now. And it just feels like such a terrible psychology for anything. Like, it feels like when your mum, when you were a child, would be like, you're not leaving your room until you've tidied it up. And that's good. Like, it teaches you good things. It was like, we'll buy a new house. We'll buy a new house. This one's messy. And also, I'm very aware that it won't be everyone. And also, I feel like 2020, he says, we're going to be able to go to Mars. That's too long. Someone else would have been there by then. Like, someone needs to pop up and put some cones out. Thank you very much. Take care. Bye-bye.
People say we're monkeying around. We're too busy singing to put anybody down.